Hello everyone, this is Summer. Welcome to my channel. This is the weekly or daily video about my learning in UNSW. Today, we like to introduce Finance 5512 Financial Market Institution Term 1 2026. It's my fourth week, and considering the process of my learning, I like to introduce week 3 tasks: equity market first, equity market one, equity and the corporation. So in the first part, I'll continue the learning process, which our professor taught this last week. And after finish that, I'll do the week 3 equity market workshop. It contains a few questions, and I'll answer it briefly. After that, I'll also finish the hard parts of the equity markets to equity and investors. And to begin with, I'd like to thanks to our Dr. Evelyn Lai. He's a very patient and wonderful professor. So, time limits, let's begin. So, first one, we like to introduce the corporations in the share market. In this chapter, we'll cover the following: understand the corporate objective and the decisions that can be made by financial manager, and examine the listing process. Listing process is a detailed equity funding alternative for established companies, and expand the calculation and NPV and IRR. Yes, this part, almost all the parts I have learned in my BPB learning in ICW. So let's begin. So the corporation objective is the main objective of the public company is to maximize the value of the firm. Public company is the company is listed in the stock market, and the goal of the financial manager must be consistent with the mission of the company, which is maximizing the wealth of shareholders. Let's make it more bigger. Yes, if the manager fails to pressure shareholders mission, they will lose the support of lender and investor. The business will cease to exist, and ultimately the manager will lose their job. It's obvious that you can see the frame. Excuse me. You can see the framework of the structure of the company. So there are four main aspects of the financial market for the financial manager to consider. First, how should the firm raise money to find investors? Second, what investors should the firm take? Third, how to manage current assets and current liabilities. For the last is how should the firm pass on the return to the shareholders. So let me introduce four parts one by one. The financial decision is to determine the capital structure and the financial objective of the corporation to maximum return based subject to an acceptable level of risk. Every investment has its risk and return. More risk, more return. That's the general of the commerce world. The business depends on the type of operation of business. Level of financial risk impacts the value of assets, liabilities, and cash flow of the businesses. There are lots of risk of company. It's bound by the security held by their interest risk, foreign exchange risk. Liquidity risk is about the insurance cash in the short term. Credit risk is risk of default or ultimate payment by debates. Capital risk is risk of insufficient shareholder funds to meet capital growth needs or observe abnormal losses. The counter risk is risk of financial loss owing to currency devaluation or inconceivable. Financial decision consider among the debates. So a very important ratio to value the financial decision is the debt to equity ratio. Yes, they will indicate the risk or be unable to meet interest due to the principal repayment associated use of use of dates. High date level increase the company level of financial risk and thus the risk of insolvency. Let me see whether it works. Yes, it works. And then I'd like to introduce the IPO. The IPO is offered to ownership to a widely new list company on the stock exchange. There are lots of patents of the company's patent company types like the sole trader, partnership, private hold company, and public company. The promoter appoints advisor and possibly possibly underwriters. Underwriters assist with underwriters assist with advice on structure, price, timing, and marketing on issue and allocation of the securities. They can also ensure the company rights and the full amount of issues may have an out clause in out clause. Let me see what's it mean. Out clause out out clause in underwriting agreement. So in Australia, the IPO is offered by Australia Australia Stock Exchange. So the listing broker is C1 is appointing the advisor, and 2 is this 2 to 10 is the preparation works. C4 is login perspective with ASIC. C3 is introduction marketing program commerce. Step 5 is processing of listing application by ASX. Step 6 is marketing and offer periods. Step 7 is closing offer share allocated trading commerces. IPO ownership in the limited liability company. So principal social equity final most principal social equity funding for most listed company. Shareholders have voting rights at the general meeting. The voting right may be transferred to the proxy. Shares shall be sold for paid or can be partly paid or paid by installment recipient. Partly paid shareholders have a contractual obligation to pay the remaining amount when it is called or due. Shareholders' liability is limited to the price of fully paid shares. IPO ownership in no liability company. So that's difference. Shareholders in limited liability company only have the return in a limited share and the risk of limited parts, limited distance, and in no limited companies shareholders are partly paid. W is highly speculative ventures. Speculative ventures. Shareholders may decide not to meet future goals, in which case and change cause the full nature the forfeit. Shareholders may decide not to meet future goal, in which case they forfeit the partly per share. So next part I'll introduce the equity funding alternatives. Different formal equity funds are available to establish company with good track record, right issue, placement, dividend investment schedule, preference share, preference shares, convertible notes, common issues option, and equity warrants. So let me introduce the right issue first. The right issue is issue ownership to existing shareholders on the pro rata ratio. Actually, it is cheaper than the market price, discount to current market share. There are two maintainable right issues: renounceable and non-renounceable. Renounceable means shareholders may sell their rights. Non-renounceable means rights may not be sold. Then the placement. Placement is about additional new directly selected new share directly to companies not required to register a prospect but are must be memoration memorandum required to usually issue at a small discount faster issue as time frame is much shorter than a right issue. Dilute shareholding of non-participating shareholder. That's different. Right issue and the placement are similar, but placement is much smaller than right issue. And third is about dividend reinvestment schedule. The dividend reinvestment plan gives shareholders the option to receive new shares instead of dividends. They can reinvest or part or any dividend paid instead of receiving this dividend cash. The advantage is that the new share usually offer a discount to the market price and avoiding brokerage and other transaction costs. Brokerage and other costs associated with current share, but the shareholders do not typically know the number of shares they will receive. Yes, the dividend reinvestment scheme is using not deliver the dividend, but to put the dividend to buy the share back and then give them back to the existing shareholders. And this preference share, which is our familiar friend, type of hybrid security and fixed rank ahead of redeem share in the payment of dividends and liquidation. That means when you have a dividend or liquidation, you have the person who have the preference share can get paid first. Not first is before the ordinary share. So their combination is cumulative or non-cumulative, redeemable or non-redeemable, convertible or non-convertible, participating or non-participating, issue with different rankings. And the pros is that advantage is that fixed interest borrowings, but they are non-equity financial, but their equity finance instrument assist in maintaining the DG ratio. Maintaining the ratio, dividends may be deferred on cumulative shares and not participating non-cumulative shares, which while trading on dividend must be paid. And the convertible shares also another type of hybrid security. Issue for the second term. So about convertible notes, the most important part is that the convertible part. Yes, it shows that the company notes into other share at a special future date and at a predetermined price. If price of the rights, then the gain is made for holders. If share price is false, holders may not exercise conversion option and will take the note cash value. That's very important. That's the most important part. These interest payments are tax deductible to the companies. So the F part is company issued options and equity warrants. That's a little bit difficult, so I'll explain the concept to you. Company issued options provide the rights but not obligations to purchase shares at a predetermined price and date. Are company into rights future equity future to the future, the option will be exact if the exact price is less than the market price of the share at the exact date. So it is similar to the convertibles, but it's like the main part is for E it is convertible, for F this is the option. Yes. Then we like to introduce investment decisions. assets are the a corporation then determines the assets and the projects in which it will invest their funds according to the objective real estate, financial assets. Yes, the allocation of the resource means the money or something else is very important for the company. The decision as to which project should be undertaken by the corporation known as investment decision, known as capital budgeting. So what's the evidence of the resources? What's the logic when a professional manager do the investment decision? It is we introduce two methods: the NPV and net present value, and the IRR, internal rate of return methods. So first, we all discuss about the NPV, net present value, the difference between the present value of the cash flow associated with investment and the cost of investment. NPV, this is function. So it cash flow. So we can see that the cash flow term we accumulate there are n years time, and we accumulated every year's present value. Use the function this term, and with the interest rate of the term. But don't forget to think about the cash flow on the first year. So the rule is the actual project if NPV is over greater than 0, reject the smaller than 0. Next is IR, internal rate of return. The internal rate of return is very similar to the NPV, but there are is connected to the NPV, not similar, because it's just changed the R words in the it is determined when the NPV equals to 0. Yes, you can see that when the I is bigger, the NPV will be smaller, and the highest part, when the highest are in that is the internal rate of return. Is that correct? Let me think about that. Yes. Actually, most of the time, the cash flow, the first year cash flow is outflow. You need to invest something and then get something back. Then, when the NPV is 0, you got the internal rate of return. That's the IRR. So that's all about the equity market 1. So this class, half class, we have spent about 20 minutes to introduce two functions, NPV, IRR, and the A, B, C, D, E, F. Six methods of the equity finance, and the IPO and the methods. So that's week 3. Let's read the rest of week 3, and we'll briefly look at the briefly scan the workshop. The first question about outline advantage of the advantage and disadvantage of the public limited corporation in comparing to other structures corporation to the business. So to begin with, we need to how do I know? We need to extrapolate how are there any other types of. So this is there are solo trader, partnerships, and income and the publics. That's all. That's the first part. So outline the advantage and disadvantage. So advantage and disadvantage. Advantage, public's house. The public means it can gain lots of public is it's the letter funds funds risks and more funds less risks. Yes. Why? Because with more shareholders, you can you can lower your risk because there are lots of retentions and many people participate in that. And three is the more professional and more maybe more revenues, or maybe um, more professional balance structure. But but on the same but at the same time there are cons because you will be be supervised by government, and you need to pay your to divide your trans transfer your earnings, and there is more management question need to be conquered. Yes, that's I think is very from the parts. And we the second question about most valuable develop a developing country aim to establish welfare exchange, discuss the key role that exchange plays in the financial market. Just as I said before, the role of the stock exchanges sorry, I need to say whether could I put it here. If I Ctrl S, I have to download it, so I cannot. So let's just one time for draft. So just to say the role of stock exchange plays in the financial market. First is for the finance rising, and the establish a good market, and facilitate the transactions, and make the lower the market risk, like the Great Depression, lower the risk of the depression. Question about the founder of the Brightmind Technical Australian software company specializing in AI or for education, plan to expand into into more other major education market to find its growth. They are currently listed the company in ASL. You work for the UBS and have been asked to advise the company through the process. Explain the role your firm would play if Brightmind Technology engages as an advisor for the initial public offer. So the question is, I work for the UBS, and the company want to list the company on ASX. So our firm acts as a brokerage. So that's the role of brokerage. So for the first one, the role of brokerage is to underwrite most of the time, because maybe your stock is so charming, so to underwriting, or I can use brokerage. I don't know how to say it. Brokerage, and the facilitates the trans transactions. Yes, offer the public initial offers, and finally you can give some give some give some professional advice. I mean, and finally is the risk management up to the company. Yes. And let's think about second question. For last 5 years later, China has been operating successfully in UK market share, UK market and technical service in high school and university education. The company now planning to expand UK market, which is highly US market, UK to US, which is highly competitive. Will need additional ones. The company UABS advice explain the key difference between these two funding alternatives. It is considered either and don't need to write additional comment. It is considering either a pro rata ratio issue on the private. So before that, we need to consider the meaning of the. It is considered either a pro rata issue on a private placement. The company has once again engaged UBS and CQ advice. Explain the difference between the two. So it's not about case, it's just about explaining the difference between the pro rata rights and the private placement. So we can explain the question by its abstract first for people facing more. So the pro rata is facing the existing shareholders. Other placement is facing selected investors, not only the shareholders, and the amount it depends on the shareholders' awareness about the awareness about the amount, and it's for it's sorry. And for the placing elements, it is determined. It is depend on the one. It depends on tricky. I don't know why. It depends on the select investor. So first question about the Four Seasons yachts, a luxurious cuisine company is considered purchasing a new commitment for its increment. Yet it benefits the ship expand generate annual revenue 5 million from passengers and onboard service. A major 2 million will be available. So we need to calculate. It's about calculation. So let me show you 8 million to expand its floats and revenue from 9 million from passengers. Delete. First is 8 million. Let's see if the January annual is 5 million. For passengers and all the major refund costing 2 will be required after both the major refund costing 2 million will be required after both the third and 8 years to maintain. So 2 million also inquires after 10 years the ship will be sold for 1.5. The final years it's 1.5. So if the company require rate of return on major will the project be accepted, so we can show the timeline for the 10 years to blah 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 blah. That's the 10 years. That's the first 0 year is when you buy it. So not see the beginning of the year. So at first time we use the we buy the money in the first year, the beginning of the year, and will be required after both the third and 8 years. 2, 3, 4. Let me show it's 8. And that year, and 3 years is the maintenance. The maintenance cost. And the final years we have income of 1.5 million because we sold it. So every year we have 5, 5, 5, and at the final time we need to use calculation of this function. That IR is 8%, and the annual return is 5, and the number is n, and we need to consider the first year minus this one, and we need to also consider the final year. So we put it in here. Final year IR is this part, and instead of that we need also consider these guys. It's in the 30 years, so it's 30 years, it is 3, and another is 8 years, 8 year. So that's the answer. And disclosure the company with the internal IRR represent and how it could be used alongside MPV to help the young decide which to discuss conceptual what is the IRR represents. So IRR means a rate of return that's applied in the MPV function when the MPV equals to 0. So when you make a decision, we need to have a basic IRR before we make a decision. So that's all about week 3 workshop, and it's about half an hour. So I think every time half an hour is enough. Let's leave the website. So let me stop here for next, and then for the next week it's about an hour classes.